13 hours 34, and you're tuned into the radio with a difference. Yes, that is Kaiju Radio 99.1 and 99.5 FM. And it is time for COVID-19 and Elections Watch this afternoon, as usual. At the helm of the program, senior journalist of Kaiju News, Leonard Gildarie, alongside Dr. Yog Mahadeo. Good afternoon, gentlemen.
Yes, good afternoon, Guyanese Babu, and that is Kevin Smith, the operators panel there. And I want to say good afternoon to everybody across Guyana, and including my dear friend sitting somewhere on the East Coast there. His name is Dr. Yog Mahadeo. How you doing, Yog?
Hey, good afternoon to you, Leonard. Good afternoon, Kevin, and good afternoon to everyone. I'm fine, thank you. Nice weather today compared to yesterday.
Yes, it is. I've been getting up doing so much things, and I probably let's get right down into it. Wherever you are, welcome. I know we have people as far away as Norway has been joining us. They want to know what is happening, and we've been bringing the news. Well, there are major developments today. It has to do with public assistance, and then we're also going to have to talk about a little of the education. We did promise to delve into that and bring it to you people. Last evening was very engaging, Dr. Yog Mahadeo. We would have had Vincent Alexander on the program, room 592, and he would have been, the gloves were off, and I know that you would have asked some very, very hard questions there. We could probably have a discussion on that. I understand that the GCOM in itself, it's day 16, I think it is.
Yes.
We day 16th of the national recount, and so when you're talking about what does it all mean for day 16, it is 25 days for the recount, and they have not taken a decision on yet as to whether they're going to extend the number of days. What we do know is that they've added 2 counting stations, and I think we are up on the 70-something boxes per day since that has happened early this week. Has that helped much? Obviously, they would have to hit, if they want to finish, I think it's about, just over 1,600 boxes now. They would have to really hit it in a big way to get over 100. Even then, it's foregone conclusion now. 25 days is not going to be enough. Yog, I want to jump straight into it, if there's something before we have our discussions here today with regards to what would have come out last night from Vincent Alexander, what he would have said as Commissioner of GCOM. He had a stake on several things. Maybe you want to give us a roundup on that.
Yeah, well, thank you, Leonard. And yes, indeed, last night was very interesting because talking to Mr. Vincent Alexander, he has been at GCOM for a number of years. One of the things I learned is that Mr. Alexander has not held a party card since 2008. Mm-hmm. So he's not necessarily a member of the People's National Congress or the PLC Reform. So that was an interesting, I think, revelation for me there. But with regards to elections 2020, Mr. Alexander's perspective on things is unique. It is like the gentleman is. He has strong views, and his views are guided by his own intellectual reasoning about why things are the way they are. Leonard, one of the things we asked Mr. Alexander was about Mingo's declaration. And he did intimate, he did say clearly that he would want the court to probably have a say on the legality or the status of Mingo's second declaration. Mm-hmm. So you and I mean, unfortunately, it was just for 60 minutes, and we really ran out of time. There was so much things to discuss with Mr. Alexander. And Leonard, you didn't even get to put a word in last night, man.
No, but I was so engrossed by what was happening, what he was saying, and so I guess I lost track. And I said, "What is Yog doing there? I need to ask a question." But guess what? It was a very, very good program, Yog. And I think one of the things that stood out at me there was when the question was posed to him, diplomacy, on the issue of diplomacy, and when he spoke about the commissioner, the Canadian High Commissioner, and he had very harsh words for her, and as to what our diplomats should be doing. And so maybe you would want to tell us a little bit that. What are some of the highlights of that thing that came out? And I think that was one that really stuck at me.
That is certainly one, because remember, the Canadian High Commission has been on a number of outlets speaking her, what in her mind went on during that fateful day. Commissioner Vincent Alexander said clearly yesterday that he totally was opposed to her interference. He said that she was not beckoned or welcomed into the room, but she barged into the room. So that I think that stands aside from what would have been related on other outlets, media outlets. The other thing that he spoke about quite clearly was that, to quote him, I think, if I may, he said that Mingo is a manifestation of untowardness that happened in the past. In other words, he has said that all that we have presently is but is a result of GCOM's inability or GCOM's unwillingness to correct clear loopholes in the system, and thus we are where we are. When we asked him about towards the end, Leonard, we were running out of time, and we did ask him about the volume of the anomalies and the observations, and so his response was that he did not get a sense that it was that voluminous.
Mm-hmm.
And also, I, as you know, you and I, we pressed him on the issue that GCOM status as is one where every anomaly that is pointed out, every observation that is pointed out, every allegation that is made is an allegation on the performance of GCOM as an entity, whether GCOM can properly run an election for this country or not. And his response was that the GCOM was given a basket to fetch water. And I think I pushed him quite hard on that one to say, no, the basket is of your making, because you have a constitutional mandate to be prepared for elections, Leonard.
Yes, and Yog, I think there are growing questions now as to what do you do with those observations or objections, as I would want to call it, with regards to the recount that is ongoing. I saw a story in Kaito News today, which would have reported on what Commissioner says Gunraj would have said. According to what I understood when we were reading the story, there was a discussion with the commissioners and the chair, Justice Retired Claudette Singh, in which some opinions were offered, in which I think it was basically transmitted from the chair that, look, these observations that are being raised right now is not something that GCOM in itself could really look at. What we're really concerned about right now is the elections recount and the results of that. So there seems to be varying issues, because if you're doing a recount and issues are being raised, why are we doing the recount and not able to raise it there? That is some of the questions. That is one of the most important questions that's coming, because the whole recount is it was intended, according to the coalition, to raise what they believe were some serious flaws in the election. At least that's the story, the narrative that's coming out after it would have started. Now that you have those objections, whether there's any grounds to them or not, we're not sure. That has not been established as yet. What we do know that every single day you're hearing reports of coalition coalition representatives that are there in the counting station raising significant number of observations, and these are being written in the report. So what happens to what is going to happen to those observations? And so that came up before the commissioner, I think yesterday or recently, and Commissioner says Gunraj is saying that it is the opinion of GCOM's chair during those meetings. During the meeting, that it is not something that could be dealt with at this juncture of time. So it probably is going to, we see something is going to happen there in terms of objections. I understand GCOM is not so happy that no decision was taken on that issue, yet it made its way into the public domain as to whether this is going to surface in a big way when the recount winds down, those observations, because the coalition has been raising them, lots of opinion as to whether there's any groundings on them. But that's another story that may need some more fleshing out as to whether the coalition is just wasting time, buying time, or whatever it is that they're doing, or they're indeed good groundings on that. I'm not sure whether you paid attention to that story, but we are, from the newspaper perspective, it is something that seems to be developing as we speak.
Correct. And Leonard, just quickly, to tell everyone, you and I will be having Mr. Says Gonrez tonight in room 592, and we will certainly be asking him some of these questions. But don't forget that the matter of the observations, observations versus objections. So observations are allowed per the order to be called out, and no certain an observation report is created. One would suggest, or one would think that logically, the fact that the order allows for observations to be made, an observation report to be created, that the commission will heed those observations and may do, I'm going through the order as we speak, may do a sample test to check on the veracity of those observations. Remember, Leonard, even the people who are making the observations, for example, Mr. Ganesh Mahipal, was on air most recently 2 days or 3 days ago, and your journalist did quite a good job in questioning him. And he admitted that their observations was made on hearsay. They do not have any facts that can substantiate. However, if they're challenged by GCOM to provide those facts, they will stand ready to provide those facts.
Well, I understand that Mr. Mahipal would have been engaging another reporter from another media house. He says that he provided at least some document, a death certificate. Not sure where he got it from, and he insisted that that the reporter did not carry or saw it fit to report on what he would have provided. But these are all things that are going to come out. But I want to jump straight into something. This is the elections and COVID-19 watch, Yog. And yesterday there's a major development in terms of information coming to the people of Guyana. We know one of the things that they would have been asking, what kind of help can we get from the government? Well, the government came out with a statement because we have been very critical as about the work the task force, the national task force COVID-19 was doing. It's headed by or is chaired by Prime Minister Moses Nagamootoo, and we have not really had a statement on them. The last thing that we knew is that they were moving to work along with the National Data Management Authority to put together a list of all persons or the persons that who should be receiving help. And they were looking at the vulnerables like persons with disabilities, single parents and so on, senior citizens and so on. Yesterday they issued a statement, and this is making it very clear how you could apply, because that is how I think they're going to do it. So I could probably quickly, because a lot of people have been calling me, and I think they're calling you too, Yog. The government of Guyana today, and this is... Yes, go ahead, Yog.
Len, sorry, may I suggest that Kevin throws the flyer up on screen maybe? Or the article?
Yes, I'm gonna ask him to do that. I'm gonna probably have to send it to him. So yes, he has it. So we're gonna put it up on screen. But let me just read it quickly. So the persons I got received some calls today as to how we could get some help, how we could get some hampers, and this is how you could do it. The government of Guyana launched a data collection mechanism which is aimed at identifying and providing tangible support for vulnerable households affected by COVID-19 pandemic and its emergency measures. Applications form can be downloaded from the Ministry of Social Protection's website, and I think if you go there, that is mosp.gov.gy, or you could go to government.gy/form. But I think the best way to do it is go to the Ministry of Social Protection's website, and you could be able to see the form there, and you could download it. We're gonna put it on our Facebook page here. But however, this thing is targeting. They say that this thing is targeting the most vulnerable. Those eligible to apply for assistance are as follows: persons currently benefiting from public assistance provided by the Ministry of Social Protection, persons who applied for public assistance and are awaiting a response from the Ministry of Social Protection, persons who suffered a loss of income due to due to COVID-19. This is the one that a lot of people would be interested in. So it's not only if you have applied for the social assistance or you've been receiving, you are also going to receive some help here. But the persons who would have lost their jobs, and of course there's some criteria. So let's read down. So households headed by senior citizens or persons with disabilities, and they say that you could call for further information on 227 227 4410. 227 4410. So let me go back that one more time. Persons who are benefiting from public assistance provided by the Ministry of Social Protection, persons who applied for public assistance, persons who suffered a loss of income due to the COVID-19, as if you lost a job, you've been sent home, the stores have closed, whatever reasons, households headed by senior citizens or persons with disabilities. And the number to call, in addition to if you go on the ministry's website, Ministry of Social Protection, you can be able to download the application form. But if you have a question, 227-4410. Yog, when we've been talking for the last couple of weeks, because this is something that really concerned me, that people was asking, and I know that we have this social cushion, or we're supposed to have something to at least ease the pressure on people who would have been hard hit. We know that the public servants would have been receiving the salaries as normal, but there's a whole group, especially from the private sector, who would have lost the job. And you're talking, just to give you an example, Long Regent Street and so on and so forth, a lot of businesses are closed. A lot of persons, we hear the Guyana Gold Fields now, they've sent home several workers, more than 100. So these things right away, it might not have an impact. They might not feel the impact right away. But there's a whole bunch of people who've been working and no longer have work. And so you could apply, there's some criteria, of course, that you would have to meet. So is there any thoughts in the head, Yoga, with regards to whether this is a good start, or is it a little too late? Is it the right time?
It would never be too late to give assistance, Leonard. I believe that finally things are coming to the fore. I rather suspect that there was a problem with financing, because every help has to be backed by available financing. There would have been a problem financing, but you and I would have seen recently and heard recently that the various embassies, like the U.S. Embassy and so forth, made donations of different forms of aid to the CDC in particular. So those things are obviously there, and they're probably now trying to put, whether it's too late is a big question. It is indeed very late, but it is never too late. But Leonard, the truth is that there has been a number of groups giving out help across the country, and it will always be welcome because you cannot reach everyone. But people need more than just a notice to say you can apply for help. People need the help now. So what we have had GPL said that they're going to reduce the VAT or remove the VAT. GRA said no VAT on electricity, right? Yet a number of persons would have called and say their electricity bill that they received within the last couple of days had a VAT on it, and that's something we need to investigate. Water, internet, telephone, all of these things, you're not getting any strategic positioning from the government. So this is a drop on the ocean that will certainly help.
Well, I don't even want to talk here. I ain't even supposed to talk here. How one utility company has let me say it. I guess my boss would never want to talk about it. One utility company has decided to penalize Kaicho News for talking, and that's okay. I'm gonna bring more talk half and leave the other three quarter out of the door. But it is very sad when you talk these things about some of the utter nonsense that the people have to put up with in Guyana from some of the people that we expect to be good corporate citizens. Yog, we have to be very critical of them, because when times are good, everything is nice and dandy. Now we need you on our side. We need some help, and it's all about the profits on them. It's really incredible to think about some of the greed that we putting up with, or some of the unfeeling things that our executives, or people within the companies, they're looking at. I'm looking at one of the things that I benefited from, which I'm very happy, was that instead of paying about $9,000 to fill my car tank, $5,000 could make it work. So that's a very good thing. You raised the issue also, you about the absence of money and so on. I think you're right. Our country is really struggling at the moment. When you look at what is happening across the Caribbean, I guess somebody is going to say we should not really make a comparison because we should be in a far better position with the resources that we have. But the reality is that we are ahead of the game when it comes to that we're still able to do something. Many of the countries within the Caribbean, they're really, really struggling. The good thing for them is that they could access financing from some overseas facilities, maybe World Bank and otherwise. Guyana can't because of the political situation that we are facing. So that is something else that we'd have to come back to. We've been hit both sides, and we've been hit very hard, kicked while we are on the ground by not only COVID-19 but also by the elections of 2020. And so we'd have to continue putting the pressure, applying the pressure, make sure that we raise these issues and understand, let our politicians, our leaders understand that we have to put all hands on deck in order to
Correct.
solve some of these problems, Yog. And so
Hmm.
it is in a very short while we're going to have one of our correspondents in the outer region. His name is Edward Passad. He is based in Region 7, that is in the Bartica, Peruni, Mazaruni, Cuyuni area there. And so yesterday we would have had the chairman of Region 9, that's a bordering area with Brazil. And that's what the biggest region in Guyana. And Mr. Brian Alicock would have been telling us about the hurdles that they're facing in that particular community, Yoke. And so when you heard what he would have said there, we have to be very, very worried because Brazil ain't no walk in the park. They took it for granted. Well, at least the leadership, the president, at least is under criticism right now. That this thing is a flu-like a thing and it's gonna pass. And they took no kind of measures to really deal with it, and so they're now paying the price. They had, I think, hundreds of persons with dying each day. They're running out of cemeteries, a place to bury people, and they've had to clear forests to create new areas there. So these are things that we'd have to. So I think Eddie Passard is going to tell us what is happening in Region 7. And Region 7 is a very unique area. It's an area of mining, lots of mining going on in Region 7 there. So it's not only Guyanese that are there, the Brazilians are there, the Venezuelans are there.
Hello, good afternoon.
Yes, we are trying to get Edward Passard.
And,
So,
and meanwhile,
yes.
you're getting him, Leonard, just to
Uh,
share with viewers and listeners, yesterday is an unfortunate day in world history.
mhm.
Yesterday is the largest, that 24 hours has been the largest day in terms of reported coronavirus victims, or people who are affected with the disease. 106,000 cases in 24 hours. So it's worrying that on one side we seem to be taking it lightly, that it's something that's happening in other countries, but on the other hand, we know it is real. And the guy yesterday, or gentleman yesterday, chairman, was
Mhm.
quite impressive in his belief that there should be a closer overwatch on what's happening at the borders and what assistance can be given to help him, while acknowledging that managing the border is going to be problematic.
Yes, and I think one of the things that is coming out, one of the stories that is coming out now, Yog, is things that we took for granted or things that we did not really pay attention to for a very long time. It's really manifesting itself. Let's look at Berbice, for instance. It's always been an informal situation when it comes to the crossing
Your
there
call is being
at sorry now we seem to have a problem connecting to Eddie, but in the meantime while we're trying to get him there, when you come to Suriname, Yog, that's always been an informal thing. People just jump in a boat and say we going over to Suriname, to Nigeria, to Paramaribo, like when you and I jump into the vehicle and say we're going to Georgetown, or on these bank or somewhere. You look at over in Region 9, It's the same thing that we have there. So we'd have to continue. We'd have to continue paying attention. We'd have to
Yes.
continue agitating. Brian Alicock was very, very clear yesterday as chairman for Region 9 that this is not something that he has any good feelings about. The challenges are incredible. You're talking about 1,000 miles of border there that they have to be to
Yes.
monitor. And one of the things that really jump out at me says, by the time you run down to Starbuck Market there where you heard that some people are crossing illegally into Brazil, the people down here and they move because they're equipped. They have satellite phones. He said satellite phones. He said
Wow.
that they have other phones, they have other equipment that, so they're ahead of the game. They're even moving over with equipment, mining equipment and so on, and these things are not easy to move. So they're driving
Mhm.
across the river, some parts of the Takatu River there, and they're
But
evading authorities.
but it speaks to our lack. Not I'm not blaming a particular person at this
No, no,
stage,
no,
but
no, no, no.
it does show that not having a legitimate government in place. You have all of these loopholes. You cannot manage things properly, and as evidence, Leonard, communities are starving. What it's about 3 months now that coronavirus disease has hit Guyana.
Hmm.
When will the center be finished at East Coast? When will after the disease is gone? When will the CDC list be finished, and when will they start to distribute things after the disease is gone? So the thing is, you would expect that a government would sit with the financial agencies, sit with the business community, sit with civil society, and come up with solutions, Leonard. But they're not doing so. How long will people wait? And
Well,
at what cost?
right, and that's a very good question. People want answers. This morning, I've been struggling the entire last week or so to call to get some information. I finally was able to make some contact with the Ministry of Education, and this is what one of the senior officials told me. He says, well, we know that there's two issues that is up in the air right now. When would school be reopened? That's one. And two, I think more importantly for some families, 15,000 persons, students were set to write the National Grade 6 exams. Of course, you have CSEC as well. There's another couple thousand. So when you have both of them and there's very little information coming out, and especially, I think on a bigger scale, are these kids really ready to write the exams? So these are things we want answers to. Apparently, there has, I think, the authorities, I think that would be the Council of Ministers, I think as they call them, I think they're set to consider some measures now. June the 3rd, I think, is when they would have said they were supposed to make a decision as to whether they open back
Yeah.
school or they lengthen the time in which it remains closed.
Right.
I think based on what I'm seeing right now, because we in the 20, this is 21st, I think it is. What we're seeing is that more than likely on June the 3rd, we're not going to see a reopening. Now, they're supposed to
But
set,
but but
yes, go
yeah,
ahead.
but Leonard, I accept what you're saying, right? Given the exigencies of the circumstances, school is going to be affected. But Leonard, the school children's education need not to have been so affected. Look, we are seeing press releases, we are seeing media releases made about people can go and look at television, or people can go and do on Facebook or do. There's so many children in this country, Leonard, without internet connection. There's so many families that cannot afford to have themselves online. So how are those children? Are those because they're poor, it's now a crime and they must be disadvantaged and left aside while those who can afford it must move on? That is really, really unfair to all the peoples of this country. And this is what I'm talking about every day. The coherence,
Hmm.
the collaborative effort with which we think up solutions in this country is obviously missing. Look, the the people who are calling themselves ministers, they're busy, so busy with politics that they have no time for the strategic involvement in planning for education and health and all of that, right? They come up every other day and they make a statement and then they disappear again. Meanwhile, children, Leonard, my son, if he has 1 year more, or if he has to write his exams this year, what are we telling that child? What are we saying to that child now? You know, there is no coherent hand-holding guidance. All of this, you go on the government information page, you're seeing all sorts of political nonsense. You look at the Kaicho, the Chronicle, which is paid for by taxpayers. All you're seeing is propaganda about the ruling party. Nothing about the children, nothing about health, nothing about education, nothing about the systematic connection of this country to move ahead. It's all politics. And that is the saddest indictment upon these people who call themselves the government presently.
Well, one of the things that I was looking at now, you have some of these teachers. The first thing we need to establish, teachers are being paid. They are being paid. They're one of the categories that are being paid by government. Now, how do you send, if a man lives in a community now, if a man lives in a community that has no internet, that he depends on his mobile data to do homework and things like that. So there's a couple sides that is so very wrong with this entire picture. He has to actually pay for that that data in his out of his own pocket. I'm not sure that the ministry gives that to him. So you expect him to continue teaching and teaching virtually, but you're not providing the necessary resources for him to do that. Then there's the other side. How many is he able to actually reach? Which is an issue that has been coming up every single week now, every single day. People are complaining to us. So you're reaching Kevin and Gildarie and Yog because they have internet. Maybe you have DSL. I myself might have data on my phone, but not everybody is very fortunate to have that. So then the question is, should you take, because a couple of students, let's say 20% that you're reaching, are the students ready to write the exam? What happens if they fail? I think a whole bunch of stuff is going to happen here.
Exactly.
So,
exactly. And that's the strategic thinking and the strategic direction that is lacking. And mind you, Leonard, let's get one thing clear. Politics aside, every ministry has in its employment technical officers. And those technical, like the public, they are permanent secretaries. I mean, you have had the permanent secretary for health here, and you could see that she is doing a great job doing at what she's doing. She's maintaining control and managing stuff. That has to happen across all the ministries. We cannot all be consumed by politics while our children are starving, while people are not getting connected, while education is going down the drain.
absolutely.
That, it boggles the mind.
Yes, Yog. And the question as to the functioning of the public service, PSs and so on, we'd have to have the conversation. But I think we have Eddie Prasad online. Edward, you hearing us?
Yes, good afternoon. Good afternoon.
Yes, we were trying. I know that in Region 7 there, it's a little difficulty getting connections and so. So I'm here on Kaicho Radio with my co-host, Dr. Yog Mahadeo. And as we've been doing over the last couple of weeks, we've been trying to get to our people within the various regions to have a handle on the situation when it comes to knowing what elections 2020 and COVID-19 especially, the kind of impact it would have had on those communities. So Region 7, Bartico, which is along the Essequibo River there at one of the banks there, it is the gateway. It's long been considered the gateway into the hinterlands. That is in addition to Linden, using the Mabura Trail. And also the entire Kuyuni Mazaruni area there. Eddie Prasad has been our correspondent for Kaicho News, and he is very familiar with especially the Puruni area, which is one of the key crossing areas into many parts of the hinterland area, especially mining communities. Eddie, welcome to Kaicho Radio. How are you?
Hey, good afternoon. Thank you. Fine. Okay. Good afternoon to you, Doctor, too.
Right. So how is it in Bartica today? Is it rainy there? What is happening?
Well, it's overcast. We had some rains earlier today.
Mm.
Yeah.
Now, specifically, we want to know, Bartika is a town now, a township. Then you also have a lot of miners pass through the area, a lot of big businesses that are there. Has a business fallen in terms of the volume that what you seeing, the busyness that would have been there? Is it business as normal? What are you seeing?
Well, what I'm seeing now is a decline, moreover, in activities normally in the front street. That's where the central commercial activities for the municipality of Bartica, where they're located. But it's a decline. We would normally open in the mornings and the afternoons, but that has been kind of curtailed and controlled so far.
Is it your conclusion that mining activities is contracted, meaning there's a reduction, or is it as normal like before?
I would say indirectly. Indirectly in the sense now that persons passing through Bartica or accessing Bartica directly, that they to source inputs, mining inputs, I would say, like fuel, foodstuff, and spares and such like. That now would have to be in an organized schedule manner. So it would have that direct, indirect impact on the mining industry. But coming under the heading of essential services, it's still in operation in both the mining districts of 3, which is Mazzaroni, and 4, Coyuni. Those are the 2 areas that make up Region 7, sir.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And so, of course, so miners have not really stopped working.
For the period of time I'm out here in Bartica, I normally would be in the interior at times periodically. I would not think so.
Uh-huh.
Right? Yeah, but from what I'm seeing, there's still activities. I visited the streets this morning. I was out for an hour or 2.
Uh-huh.
And I'm still seeing down at the boat end, that's the port or the area where the Coyuni boats are.
Uh-huh.
There's still much hive of activities and lots of goods I've seen this morning being loaded for that direction.
Well, that's interesting because we've always been talking about one of the backbones of Guyana. Rice has been one of the mainstay. Gold has remained one of the biggest foreign currency earner. But of course, your knowledge is very intense when it comes to the Peruni area, which is a waterfront area there. A lot of stuff that is happening. What are you seeing there? Is there been a big influx of Brazilians, of Venezuelans in that area? We're hearing so.
Yes, for the general, I would not be specific to Peroni areas because what would happen? You earlier made mention that Bartica is the gateway to the interior. Yes, indeed, it is the gateway to the Coyuni and Mazzaroni areas. And what is happening now, we have a lot of influx of, I would say, Spanish Venezuelans in the areas. And I'm having reports where, it is a cause of concern in the current crisis, and being aware of the fatality and lethality of this current international pandemic in COVID-19, it is a cause of concern where these people would be coming in and being around, particularly the Peruni landing, which has been rated by authority as the second most populated area for Region 7.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So that has happened. There's also reports that in that particular area, and likewise on other landings too, in the Coyuni, particularly in Quartz Stone, they are not adhering to the curfew. They would only adhere whenever the enforcement would visit the area, or the police would be visiting the area then and only then. And this is a cause of concern in the current circumstances.
Is it, before I hand you over to my co-host here, is it your impression or conclusions, Mr. Prasad, that in the area, Region 7 area there, that these entrance of the Spanish, of the Venezuelans and the Brazilians, that these are some latest arrivals? The reason why I'm asking, because we've closed our borders, and if there are some new arrivals or lots of new arrivals, it is indicative that our borders are not so very secure. So that's why I'm asking.
Lenny, it is a cause for concern. Bartica has regional task force of COVID-19, and it is a cause for concern for us here in the region. Our areas are vast geographically. We have the border from bordering Venezuela, from the San Martin area, and it is a cause of concern. Definitely, it's porous, and it is a cause of concern when we reflect on some illegal activities that we did cover together in work, coming through from the San Martin area down into Coyuni, which is passing into the Carranca to Bartica. So it is a cause for concern, sir.
Yog, I know that you have some questions here. Yes, good afternoon, Yog Mahadeo.
Good afternoon to you, Doctor.
I would have seen some headlines that people seem to not be following the curfew and police have had to pick up a couple of people. What's your feeling like with regards to the general attitude of people there? Are they ignoring the virus? Are they, adhering to the laws? What's it like?
Doctor, I'm very sad, disappointed, and concerned to report on this that I would basically put as poor comprehension by all. For indeed, the authorities here and sundry has promptly enforced the protocols that are so directed from the gazetted national emergency measures. And it's from poor comprehension about the seriousness of this virus. I would say that since I was out this morning, as I've indicated to you, and I tried to make a visual assessment, it's nearly about 50% of the people then are not walking with a protective face mask and not thoroughly observing the social distancing factors. So this is the situation. We have a situation, as you've just mentioned, too, with the curfew scenario. At night, there's still the movements, I would say, unwarranted, and it's nice now to know publicly that the enforcement or the police has indicated to us in public what they are doing. And I guess this is a signal of what it is to come, because if they're going to continue now in the nights, there is a signal that these vehicles will be impounded at our community center ground here in Bartica, and persons will be processed for court.
So, Yog, in the meantime, yes, go ahead.
The cooperation that you're getting from you being a person of the media, are you finding that you're getting the usual open door cooperation from authorities, from the police, from the NDC and from the RDC and stuff like that? Or is it a little bit more, is it different now?
Well, that's a nice question. Yes, to an extent, but the way how I operate, I would try to get my information, valid and authentic information as of such. Mm-hmm. But I must let you know that in between, even though recently I had intimidating telephone calls, but that hasn't deterred me, because what is my focus now is that this is a situation that whatever all of us, journalists, the police, and everyone we are doing, it's a battle. It's a battle against a lethal and fatal invisible enemy.
Correct.
So I'm not intimidated. The intimidation would come, from persons, particularly in the interior location. I receive a call with regards to, highlighting issues and relatively with the curfew. But when we look at this situation now, right, bearing in mind that Bartica is the gateway to the interior, we are in a very precarious position where the movements of persons heading in and out of the interior is concerned, where this COVID virus is concerned. But I must declare to you that I'm seeing movements, there are measures and systems in place, and we are very concerned. Concerned in the sense now that it's only the human factor, the aspect in this entire scenario that can taint further the public status and level of service that we're enjoying currently in recent times.
Right.
Yes.
My last question for you would be more or less your based on your interaction with the authorities and your interaction with various persons there. What is your gut feel, especially for people who are in the interior? Do you feel that this COVID-19 may have had an impact far beyond where you are seeing and where you are looking presently, but that people are not coming up or coming out to say they have the disease?
Come again, they're not, please.
They're not reporting themselves to be checked. They don't know why they're sick, so they're not coming to the hospital.
It's a kind of ticklish question in the sense now that being aware of some health issues that malaria, particularly let us use that as for a particular example,
Right.
which are with common symptoms, similar symptoms to this virus, COVID-19. I think, in my, from my paradigm or my perspective, that persons, many would just look at it, for as a malaria symptoms,
Right.
And here again is what I was earlier making mention, the poor comprehension.
Right.
Doctor, with all due respect to everyone, we have the variances in IQ levels, for want of better, terminology, with all due respect to everybody. Especially more of in the mining areas. Now, with them understanding fully, appropriately and correctly what is happening and what are the circumstances surrounding this situation, and into not taking it only as about malaria, but probably could be even beyond.
Right.
So here's
why I asked that, and Leonard, this is something we can probably take as a discussion later. I see Dr. Mahadeo is online, and maybe he could even inbox us with a comment, a response to this, because from the interior, Leonard, where Edward is presently located, the people under normal circumstances, there is a threat of malaria. And guess what is the treatment, or what would have been one of the treatments that would have been or ought to have been available? Is the hydroxychloroquine. So my question was actually based to get that factor out, whether people who are suffering from malaria are now coming out and are now there's an intermixing and intermingling, and whether there is adequate steps being taken to separate and yet treat both of them. At this stage, one would question whether enough of this drug is actually available to treat both situations, especially in an outlying area like Bartica, which is the gateway of the interior.
Go ahead, Eddie.
Yes, that's putting me out into deeper waters. Now, I must let you know that what I've been privy of is that in that respect, it is subordinatedly controlled under the regional health authorities here, sir. And before and prior to this situation of COVID-19, it has been organized, channeled, and controlled in the sense now that there is controlled access to having malaria tests done, and those treatments are not administered willy-nilly in the sense, if this is to ask your questions. Access could be available too from the pharmacies, like right down in Georgetown where you guys are. But what personnel has been trained to do is to educate persons on the effects of using such drugs anyhow.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, and just let me take it from here. Would you say, Eddie, that the authorities down in Region 7 they have the situation under control? Would you say, given the circumstances?
Nice question. Lenny, in recent time, I'm very proud to say this, that we in Bartica and moreover in Region 7 have been privileged to have eventually the competent and qualified administrative personnel to administrate the health sector for the region. And a lot has been accomplished in the sense now with the establishment of outposts and such like, and taking a health program, the delivery of the health services to the people in this respect. So we are confident in the sense in what's happening and what is available here, but like I've said earlier, it is only us, we the people, and our attitude and our behavior towards COVID virus, the COVID-19 virus, and likewise the protective measures in the gazetted emergency measures, the protocol in us adhering. So,
Right.
if our behavior is negative, we can destroy what's happening. We've talked earlier, Lenny, and at that time Region 7 hadn't had any reported confirmed cases of COVID-19. Now that we're talking here now, we're only looking at the capital town of Region 7 in Bartica. And we're here in a defend mode.
Which is a very
Leonard,
good thing. It's a
one
good
more
sign.
question
Sure.
for Eddie. Len, one more question.
Yes.
Eddie, are people
Yes.
there in your eyesight? Are people wearing masks?
Dr. Gildarie said, I'm very sad, disappointed,
Okay.
and concerned. As a general rule of assessment, or as I mentioned earlier, when I looked around and I decided, I said, let me just take a look and my own mind view. What I saw this morning is 50% of the person with face mask on. The others, without, some would just have it dangling under the chin, like in a sort of dribbling bib fashion. So, it is this kind of nonchalant, this kind of
Wow.
Don't care.
carefree attitude that it is a concern, for those that are, fully aware of what's happening and what is needed. God forbid that such act to result in negativity, total negativity. The impact that it will have on those that are complying and those that are adhering and those that are fully knowledgeable and all that it takes for the defense against this virus. This defense is now that we also to recognize that we have is our only option now available in our hands, bearing in mind that as yet no treatment internationally has been found or a vaccine.
Right. So there you would have had it. That's Mr. Edward Prasad, Eddie Prasad as I know him, and he's our correspondent in the Region 7 area, Bartica and the Peruni, Mazaruni, Cayuni area there. So I wanted to say thank you very much, Eddie, and I hope that you have a pleasant rest of the day. Stay safe. I know that it's a very critical area in terms of Guyana's economy. Region 7, very rich in gold also and other minerals. So do have a pleasant rest of the day there until we speak again.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, Yog, some very interesting thing coming out there from Region 7. There seems to be an increase, and that will come against the backdrop that we're supposed to have tight watching of our borders. And so, if you want to get into, I think, Region 7, what I understand that the border is open at Region 2. That is, I think he would have said the San Martin area there. So if you got to bring the people, if Venezuelans come into the area, you actually have to bring them into Region 2 along the coast there and then take them upriver from the Essequibo River there till up to Bartica. So there's several checkpoints that you would have been crossing. So it means that several persons are not paying attention or are being bribed, because let's call a spade for these people to end up there. I'm not sure if there's any other area that they could use other than the Essequibo River. I rather presume there are many roads, but there are also a lot of checkpoints. Pomeroon area, Suriname, along the river there. Bartica in itself got the police people there and other authorities. Trafficking in person and so on. But some interesting things that is coming out there. Bartica, place where not a lot of eyes would be watching, like in the coastline area here. And what he's saying also, people, maybe 50% of the people not wearing the mask, not paying attention, that don't care attitude. What are some of your thinkings?
Well, indeed, and one of the feedback that we just received, to say thanks to Dr. Mahadeo, he has sent an advisory that what in his experience, what has been happening is that GPC manufactures hydrochloroquine and some of these things, and so what he don't know and nobody knows, you and I would probably have to find out whether these drugs are available in the public health system, whether they're available. So that's another question that we have to ask because, as you know, with COVID-19, there has been a run for this type of pharmaceutical supply. Also, what he has advised us, Leonard, is that in many cases, miners and loggers have gotten used to self-medicate and to take precautions. So that is one of the pluses. But as to whether the drugs exist, whether the public health system would have an adequate supply to mitigate the kind of demand on it presently is something that I guess we'll have to engage with the public health ministry for that.
Absolutely. And so yoga, people are starting to ring our lines as well. So we go straight into some calls here.
Sure.
Caller, you on the air. Good afternoon.
Hi, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir.
Leonard.
Yes.
Just like to make don't put it a statement, but just something I want to contribute to you guys. About these Spanish people that come across in Guyana, right?
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to, put the whole Guyana to understand. These people are human beings, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just like us. If we was in the state of these people, right? You didn't think these people would treat us differently if we go into their country? That's all I have to say to you. Thank you. Good afternoon.
Thank you very much, and it is a very good point. You will note that nobody is criticizing. Of course, we have to be very very happy. If you look towards the east, in Berbice there, we would have over the years had a very very close relationship with Suriname. Many Guyanese, thousands of Guyanese live over there, and they come and they visit Barbies or wherever they got to visit, and it's a normal thing for them. Venezuela has opened its borders for us for a very very long time. We had thousands of Guyanese live there. In fact, thousands have returned. We have Guyanese living all over the world. At a time like this, I don't think anybody in the right mind would have any objections to Venezuelans coming here. The concerns that we're going to have is that we should maintain control of the situation of what is happening, because you don't want to open a border and then Venezuela has an issue. We know there's a lockdown and a lot of information there as to how bad the situation is because of the civil situation when it comes to what is happening in Venezuela itself, politically, economically, and socially. And so you would have to, you would want to be very careful. Hence, we've been looking very closely at what is happening in Brazil. Brazil got a very, I think one of the boys used the word "don't care" kind of attitude, at least for the leadership when it comes to coronavirus. And so we have to be careful that as a country, our authorities take the necessary steps, or if they don't, we have to ensure that they are aware that these are some of the things that could affect us, because you don't want to close the borders like our airport, including, and close all the borders along from Takatu Bridge in the Brazil area, Latam area there, and then close Suriname, and then close the airports, and then you have the back door open for people to come here. So the concern is essentially people actually coming here and you don't know who's coming and whether you are able to screen them. I went into GRA this morning, and before I go in there, you had to stand 6 feet apart, and you had to actually take the test to see whether your temperature is up or down, and that is one of the things that we have to live with. What is happening at the borders? Any screening being done? If you bypass, is that a cause to be worried? Yog, quickly, if you want to wade into that.
Well, the caller certainly has a point. But you look at a couple other things, and Leonard, I'm reminded of the sensitivities of the current situation in Guyana. So one would have to evaluate a humanitarian crisis building up in Venezuela.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, you can only open your borders if there is enough mitigation, enough measures in place to stop the disease from coming here. Because if you have a huge influx of people coming in that may or may not have the disease, it means it's like you're putting a death sentence on your own people too. And this is why every country, including Venezuela, including Trinidad, all over the place, they have closed their borders for the duration of this virus. After the virus is gone and uplifted, then that's on the other side, though, Leonard. The humanitarian side is extremely important, and
Yep.
I'm mindful of a post that Dr. Mahadeo himself would have made a little while back that speaks to humanitarian situation within even the quarantine centers. The kind of food people are giving, even though they're in quarantine, they are humans and should be treated in a respectable manner. But remember that while you respect refugee rights, the caller to his point, I am informed that the public health facility, they have a special branch. The public health ministry should have a special branch for border health, for that specific. Remember when we had, I can't remember who was it, and we were talking about the border, the entry point at the Skellen border. We asked whether the border patrol people were testing the temperatures of people crossing over and whether enough care and precaution is taken. So there ought to be all of this in place, but it goes back to whether the system is working the way it ought to.
And I agree. And so humanitarian versus safety, but we do
Yeah,
love our
bec-
neighbors,
because
right?
because Leonard, you cannot to quote here, and I'm quoting Dr. Mahadeo, we cannot import medical problems without proper preparation.
That's correct. It's a very dangerous thing. But of course, we love our neighbors. We welcome them, I think, in Region 1. And Diamond there, if you go from Diamond to Horse, and I told people there, you should see what is happening on the River Dam area there, along the Demerara River. It's something that's a story need to be told. I probably would have to go there and do a live Yog. But I think there's a caller online. Let's go straight to the lines. Yes, good afternoon, caller. You're on air. Good afternoon, caller. Yes, good afternoon.
Hi, good afternoon.
Yes, sir.
What I would like to know is that I am hearing that the 1st of June we will have a lockdown, but I was questioning to know if if it is a complete lockdown, where like supermarket is being locked down, various shops and so forth. There's one of the question I would like to know, because if there is a complete lockdown, I'm a laborer. I have 5 persons living my home. Presently now, a weekly ration I buy. So not to buy a month ration, that would be pressure on me. So the other question I would like to ask, I listened to the 5 last night with Mr. Alexander,
Yes, room
where he
592.
said that the High Commissioner barged into that room. And I had listened to a program with her, which she said she never barged into the room. When the Madam Chair saw her, she indicated to her with her finger to come in. Right? So I guess if people was in that meeting, they would have never seen when the Madam Chair indicated to her with her finger to come in. You know, it's like if somebody calling you with the finger. I heard that she said that the High Commissioner, she said she didn't barge in. And thirdly, the question I would ask, I think that meeting, it was a planned meeting. And the next thing I would like to know, to highlight, water bill, electricity bill. Before this COVID-19, my bill used to be coming 4,000. Now, presently, I have an electric bill, 9,000 here. Water bill is 8,000. Even I think it should be reasonable if these, you don't want to pay nothing, But even if it's slashed in half, people could still able to, do something and able to work out something for that. There are so many questions that I have to ask. I think also 2 more workstations to put in place to work in Region 4. And I think things would be more fast, and they could able to meet, even they meet the 25 days, they wouldn't be a couple days over it. So that is my point.
So I do thank you very much. There are some very, very pertinent, some very, very important points there by that caller there. Let me address the first one that you would have raised, and then maybe we could talk a little about some of the other stuff. Yog would probably talk about the Canadian. But let me say that June the 4th, you were hearing a lot of rumors been going around the place. Let me tell you that at the moment we do happen to have a partial lockdown. The partial lockdown has to do with the closures of the border and the closure of non-essential businesses. We know that there has been some breaches and so on. So the country is in a lockdown mode. So I would call it a partial lockdown. A full lockdown, I'm not sure what that really entails. That is something that is totally new. I think nobody's really experienced it. If you're talking that, I rather suspect that it has to do with nobody could walk on the road. You can't even be driving. You must have unless you go into the emergency at the hospital or something. I'm not sure whether this country could ever take something like that. That would be madness. I think what we'd have to do is maybe a little stricter enforcement is where the answer or the answers may lie. You're talking, and maybe you could probably add there. But I think there's a lot of rumors flying. I don't think there's going to be a total lockdown. Even some of the government persons would have been, that I spoke with, would have indicated that that's not something that would probably be endorsed by President David Granger. When it comes to the bills, I'm paying very close attention to my bill. I'm waiting to see the GPL bill as well as the GWI bill. I understand that my water bills have gone up, and I've made a complaint about it. I think last year I paid maybe $3,000, $4,000. Now I think it's about $7,000 one month. And so I'm really, really concerned. I understand that I have to pay, but I'm not sure where the amount, the numbers are coming from. With regards to the workstations, well, let's go. You did raise an issue about the commissioner, the High Commissioner of Canada to Guyana. We would have received, of course, did interviews with her, and she would have been interviewed at other places as well. And she insisted that she did not barge into any room, that she did indicate that she wanted to go into, alert them, the commissioners, that the declarations for Region 4 were being read. So, Yog, over to you.
Yeah, thank you for that. And caller, you are right. But our role here is to ask the questions, and you would have to decide for yourself, what is the version. Mr. Alexander expressed very clearly that he was not appreciative of the role of the Canadian High Commission, and that is on record. The Canadian High Commission, of course, is free to respond. And I think Leonard would be the first to say we are always open to have that matter dealt with or not. I mean, it is something that I'm sure everybody would want to think is behind us, and let's move on. The truth is, though, that the questions, Leonard, with regards to the elections and GCOM, is something that we will continue to assess. So tonight, for example, caller, we have Mr. Seth Conrad, that we will be asking some of the same questions we asked to Mr. Alexander last night, because Seth Conrad is on the other side of the table. And thirdly, tomorrow night, Leonard, Friday night, to everyone out here, Leonard and I will be hosting the one of the observer teams in room 592. We're actually going to have the private sector observer team to give us their view of what's happening, what's not happening. Remember, the private sector has an observer team in the recount process. So certainly tonight and tomorrow night, where the elections are concerned, Leonard, we are going to be getting some real life scenario of how things are happening and what's the perspective of the observer team and the commissioners themselves. One thing with regards to the lockdown, caller, please, Leonard is right. You do have a partial lockdown in place. You do have a partial system in place where there is a lockdown of non-essential services. There is a 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. curfew. And Leonard, if I'm not wrong, that has been extended to June 3rd. We have heard all the rumors you have heard about a total lockdown and all of that, but there is no substantiated information or source of information for that.
And I will wait because I think that would probably have to be discussed. I don't think it's easy for government. I don't think no country could really have a total lockdown. I think that is a recipe for disaster. I think there's a caller online. We head straight to the line. Good afternoon, caller.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon. You're here.
Yesterday, the caller called and asked how that people could vote, right? And all I want to know that people could vote, but nobody never asked the PPP that, because 28 years ago I hear since I was a little boy here in the PPP saying PNC is not there, people voting. Even to this recent election here, on one of Barrett's campaign, he said he supported them. They never win we. He used to have to get there, people voting. So the question there when I asked you should have told you yesterday, there's a question for the PPP, not for you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, dear Mr. Gill. As normal.
Let me answer that one, Leonard.
Sure.
Sir, if you were to go back in history, I would encourage you to go and read the CIA reports. There are some videos online about the elections from 1964, 1968, 1973, all of the elections. There are videos that would have shown the records of what happened. And in this case, last night we did ask Mr. Alexander certain questions. Mr. Alexander himself said that he does not share the sentiment of the volume of observations that are being made. So with regards to the dead people voting, sir, I'll tell you something that I believe firmly, and I'm going to ask the Observer team tomorrow night. Sir, for anybody to vote, Leonard, I went to one polling station. There's a GCOM officer. That person has his eyes wide open, takes my ID card. They're looking on a folio. They're seeing my picture there. They're comparing this man who walked in with his ID card, asked me to take off my sunshade to make sure they could see my face. They look at their folio. They see my picture there. They call my name out. They call my serial number out. They call everything. The party agents look at me. I remember in my case, when I went in to vote, there was an observer team from one of the European countries there that actually stepped in. The officer said to me, "Can you please wait, sir?" He went and told the people to leave the room. All of that vigilance existed there. I went in as a voter. Now, for somebody to vote, Leonard, that is not in this country, and I'm saying that in lifted commas because it's impossible, or for somebody to vote that is supposedly dead, it means the GCOM officer probably was dead in the room. The APNU AFC agent was probably asleep. The PPP agent was probably asleep. All the other party agents, the whole room was probably filled with dead people to allow somebody to walk in and cast a vote. That's what would have to happen for somebody who is not listed here to cast a vote. And that's as plain as it can be. Let me tell you this question. Let me answer this one last thing, Leonard. If you go to the one polling station that was revealed yesterday, where I think 203 persons voted for APNU, 3 persons voted for PPP, and there were 24 objections. Are you saying that the PPP people would have been asleep for 24 people to vote for APNU AFC? Something has to be wrong with our reasoning and logic to have those kinds of conclusions.
Well, I could be the devil's advocate and ask you, Yog Mahadeo, is it not possible that me as a coalition would have objections to the procedures that were used? Could I logically ask you if something like that could happen? I'm seeing something here. These couple of people that are here, although they would have voted for myself, could I not possibly ask whether the system that was used was above board?
Well, but go back to the logic base. The logic base is that the 7 or 8 people in the room had to either have fallen dead at the moment when you have somebody cast a vote for you, or they were all asleep. Or it gotta be the PPP or APNU, because we don't know who's winning this election. We gotta be one of these two sides, buy out every single polling agent, bought out every single GCOM officer, bribe them all, and so that means in every polling agent, people who voted didn't matter, it's people who didn't vote that matter. And the logic of it, Leonard, to answer your question, it drives you wondering whether we are really applying good sense and sensibility here. You cannot discount, Leonard. There is no list, no polling list, no voters list that will not have. Look, let me say this final thing to you. You had a prolonged and extended claims and objections period before the elections. People seem to forget that conveniently. You had a claims and objections period. All the political parties could have gone and objected to people on the list. Whether they did or did not, at this stage, the fact is that from the time the elections were announced, or from the time the list was finalized, a day before the election, Leonard, somebody may have died. People naturally born and people naturally died. That doesn't mean the person is going to come and vote. I mean, the truth is, my question remains. 7 or 8 persons in that room had to have been dead at that moment or during the whole day to allow 300 persons to vote for one side.
It could be that all of them were bribed and very corrupt. We have some very corrupt guys. So whatever the conclusion,
including where you had the 24 objections where the PPP got no votes.
I think the political parties have been bribed. What's wrong with you, Yog? So we had straight into the phone line. Good afternoon, caller. You there?
Good afternoon, caller.
Yes, sir.
I would like to ask the first fellow talk about dead people. They asking this question for me. In the same place where the plane is to land in Bordeaux, that is one. Where the ballot box is being found in the sea and in the sea, all over the place, ballot box is found. At that time, when I was a young man, right? In the 19 road there, plane land there in Burnham time. I picked the ball back, I can't throw it, I sit up. At that time. When he didn't have that time, he realized that time, supposed to get man a vote there. Because Burnham, you should do that man vote here. Because when you go to polling class there, you say you don't vote already. You understand?
Mm-hmm.
When you go to vote, you say you don't vote already. You need to cast. So you got to walk out, you can't attack nothing. But who? So he attacked my dead man. And also the corners who are looking in the election. Thing, the Yog Mahadeo talk about.
Yes.
Because if you are free, you can't go dead man can vote. But to me, knowledge that you can't get people to do the government job.
Yes.
Right? You got to get my people who got to open the eyes 12 hours. For my 4 o'clock ticket, till what time I finish. I used to work at the GCOM, as a party agent.
Yes, sir.
Understand?
Yes,
So
sir.
I know about it. So this year, these people here, they must talk about the history of the PNC. PNC always been, Bonham always say he got to win this election. He had to take all the ballot back and throw them 19 storm and to officials and find ballot back all over the place. So what he attacked there, he doesn't know the history of the PNC party. You understand? He never do nothing wrong. Never in history. He always win all elections come down. I can't tell you as well.
Okay,
You
sir.
understand?
Uh-huh.
Thank you.
Okay, I think it's okay for that, man. All the best to you, man. Man,
Thank-
it's nice program, steady, man.
Thank you very much, sir.
I like the program and I like the way that you are questioning people. And said that Mario, I like your question thing last night a lot. And he come out from the root of since 2011. So he called you some stories there. That's good. I
Okay.
like that.
Okay. Thank you very much, dear caller, and thank you for your kind words.
Leonard, there is another dimension to this whole thing. We got people on both sides, and the narratives. And my point in explaining it the way I did, using the folio and using all the party agents, is to explain that in people of Guyana, you need to. I hate to say it like this, Leonard, but people probably need to stop listening to the political leaders and use their own brain sometimes to think about the logics of something. We all get so upset about each other. We all start to fight each other because somebody says so and because somebody else says so. What about your own thought? What about your own logic? And the final point I'll make on it, Leonard, is my position is there seems to be a set of people in this country that has a hatred for maybe the People's Progressive Party, and to thy kingdom come, they don't care if the election has to be thrown away and the ballot boxes be burnt. They just don't want the PPP to be sworn in. Leonard, you and I, we sit on a different seat. We don't care who is the government of Guyana, but the will of the electorate has to be respected. And there's nothing you can do about that. You cannot say you don't like Yog, so kill him and put Leonard in charge. That is obscene. You have to let the rule, you have to let the Constitution prevail. And for too long, for a majority of our 55 years of independence, our Constitution has been kicked aside.
And that is true, and I want to repeat what we've been saying here the last couple of weeks. This program here, room 592 as well, and which Dr. Yo could probably speak for himself there, we do not endorse any political party, not the opposition, not the coalition, not any one of the smaller parties. We go for whatever the system, as long as the system works. We are looking at the system, what went wrong from March the 2nd. We know that on March the 2nd, everybody is saying that the process went pretty smooth. It is what transpired afterwards that has everybody 2 months later that we do not have a declaration, and therefore a president has not been sworn in as yet. We're very interested in that so we could move on, that we could deal with COVID-19 and so many other issues. For example, the fact that our oil is out there in the oceans, it's being taken away, and we seem not to be paying any attention. Why would you not want to pay attention to what is happening to the oil that belongs to you? Because you own part of it.
And Leonard, thank you for raising that, because it's you and I on room 592 a couple of weeks back that we spoke about oil, and we plan to do so next week again. Because the truth is, while we're dilly-dallying on everything and prolonging a recount and making sure maybe that it never happens, what's been happening? Exxon has been burning 2 billion cubic feet of gas, To the people of Guyana, listen to this. ExxonMobil has burnt away, set to fire, 2 billion cubic feet of gas. That is, they literally burn Guyana cash and Guyana natural resources away. And while that is happening, Leonard, what we doing? We fighting each other about dead people voting or dead people not voting. I mean, at some stage, this country has to get real and move beyond this thing about Afro-Guyanese and Indo-Guyanese and PPP and PNC and the kind of nonsense that we love to spend time in, and pay attention to the plight that we are putting our great-grandchildren under. And that is as harsh as the truth can get.
Well, let me put it harsh to that. Let me put it this way. If you're not interested in your pocket, I'm interested in my pocket. So let's start paying attention and pay attention in a very harsh way when it comes to protecting what is ours. And if you're not interested in what is yours, maybe you have a lot of money. But what happened to your children? Do you have enough money for them? And they have a right for you to protect them when it comes to their legacy.
Correct. And Leonard, Glenlal has done, I think, yeoman service in exposing the oil contracts. And let me just say this for the record. Both governments, current and past, are equally guilty on very, very, very poor contracts foisted upon this nation. Kaichur News has been on the forefront exposing a lot of these things. The truth is, no government ought to be sitting idly by when Exxon is flaring and burning that gas away. They're supposed to haul them in front of the courts. They're supposed to be hauling them, EPA is supposed to be hauling them in and say, why are you burning away our natural resources? Trotman has been on record saying that they are allowed a limited flaring. But oh man, 2 billion? You know how many people, the entire Latin America maybe, could have been given that gas to use freely, whilst presently families got to pay to buy cooking gas to go and cook their food. And we are burning it away in the ocean. And that's the contrast, Leonard.
Well, let me tell you, while we've been sleeping at the wheel, while we fell asleep at the wheel, the authorities have allowed ExxonMobil.
They have fell asleep to the wheel.
Yes, they have allowed ExxonMobil several flights in at the airport there, at our Chedijangan airport. It's supposed to be closed, but guess what? They're allowing them because it's an essential service that these people come in and they change the shift. So in the meantime, while we're not paying attention, the airport has been allowing these people to come in. We don't know what kind of a system that they have to monitor these people when they come. We don't have an issue with that. What we have an issue with is the kind of reporting mechanisms that are in place so we could be able to fully gauge the situation. I did see the report on the burning of the natural gas. Guess what? We have not seen a report from the authorities, from the government, with regards to whether they're interested that one of the byproducts that has a big value in it is being burned away, while we have little say, and we're not even sure whether we could have gotten some money in it. We're not sure what's the next development stage. We're not sure. I think GPL was supposed to be building a natural gas plant or a power plant that is going to be partially fueled by HFO and natural gas. And we're not hearing anything about those things. At this point in time, should we be interested?
Yeah, to put it in perspective, even Nigeria has prohibited any flaring. Don't burn our gas. Tap it, pipe it, supply it, and give us the revenues. But, you know, again, it comes back to what we said at the top of the program. Until you have a legitimate government in place, this country will continue to fall apart because all the so-called politicians, all they're interested in is what's happening at the recount, not the lot of the people. They're not interested in running this country and getting people taken care of.
Absolutely, and let's not forget what is happening in Trinidad. Trinidad is running out of oil pretty quickly. I think there's very little oil wells remaining that's functioning. They have basically closed their Petrotrin, which is the big plant that they have there, the refinery. What we also know is that they are dependent, a big part of their revenues has to do with natural gas, which is being piped in, and you could do so many things with natural gas. It could fuel your power plants. I think byproducts, you have fertilizers, among other things. You could put it as gas, natural gas that could be used in so many other ways that you could apply it. So let us get real. While we're fighting about a couple of dead people voting, while we fighting about who has won the elections, while the opposition and the coalition are fighting with each other, we're not paying attention to the things that should matter to us, that we have so much money out there, and the people who are taking it out, we're not paying attention to them. So where are your priorities? Correct. I'm not sure whether we have another caller online. Let's go straight to the caller. Good afternoon, caller. You're on the air. Okay, so if you're now joining us very quickly, the numbers is 226 7453, 226 7453. We have a caller on the air. Good afternoon, caller. You're on the air.
Good afternoon, gentlemen.
Good afternoon, sir.
I'd just like to make a quick point before I move on to what I want to say. Is any system that anybody has developed, give me enough time, it can be beat. So it's possible that dead people can be vote, even though we didn't see any proof. We haven't seen any proof, but the people who are talking about the 80s and 90s, so we haven't seen any proof now. So that doesn't make any sense.
Yes.
As it relates to the COVID-19 and the Brazilians and the Venezuelans and all the borders and how big they are, the problem we have again is that we have too many politicians. I'm not talking about now. From time memorial running everything. The technical people is not doing it. Because it's simple for me. In those big areas, they have rangers inside those areas there. Equip each ranger with one of those same things where you test for temperature. A ranger would know if you saw somebody here, yes, then this is a new person. and put certain things, alert the police and say these people need to be in quarantine for 14 days to be certain. There are people, we have enough technical people all over this country that are not being used because every decision that is being made is political, and I'm not talking about now. We have technical people that can be used in every area, and together we all can harness it. As it relates to education, I can speak of this personally because my wife's a teacher.
Mm-hmm.
She has set up the program. And sometimes it's 5 children out of work class is able to get onto this.
You're talking with there, man. You hit the point there.
And she said she's not giving up. She's working with who's there. Call some parents. But what can you do? Some of the parents say they got to go to work. So they can't go to work and leave their phone home. The people don't have a lot of what we call tablets and laptops and all these things. And some of them don't have internet. So somewhere, that's why I said yesterday, the NDCs, the RDCs, all these buildings that they've just went collect money instead of doing roads. They have conference rooms. They have Wi-Fi there. They can help. This thing got to be a collective. We're in a pandemic. Find ways, because you can't leave the children just like that. Find ways, start thinking. And that's because the reason why we're there, because everybody doing politics, even at the NDC and RDC, everybody concentrating on the count. That's not what their job is supposed to be. As long as you're elected, you concentrate on your community. When it comes to this thing with the CDC and the government putting up a list, it was very, very simple in my mind. We had an electorate with a list. That list could have been used. You can weed out who's not there, who's there that is what we call financially stable, and you can find everybody and work with that list. Check with your same NDCs and RDCs, and they can tell you, well, yes, this person was working here, they're home, and these people could know these things. But yes, we're not doing that because why? Everything is about politics. I really don't give a crap about any party. But when it comes to running this country, the reason we are failing, and you just talk about Exxon, because the technical people are not there to stop and see things. Everything is a politician. You got to wait till the minister come or wait till this person come. The PS, for me, is rubber stamps because they still have to wait on ministers to make decisions when it's not supposed to be that way according to our laws and our constitution. I listen to you after lunch. Sorry I sound so passionate, but I'm very upset with what's going on in our country.
Man, let me tell you this. Thank you very, 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 very much, caller. I think you're right on the ball. I'm not sure whether you're reading my thoughts or whether you've been listening to us over the last couple of weeks. You said you did. And those are exactly the same thing that Dr. Yog Mahadeo and myself have been talking about. Let's talk about the PS and the ministers. Over the years, we know that the PS, based on the law, that the PS is basically the chief executive officer of the ministries. They're supposed to be the one running the day-to-day. We know over the years that the ministers have taken on the role of running the ministry, and when they're supposed to be looking after policy matters, like coming up with something, how do we deal with people? How do you start? Have you started planning your retirement? How do you deal with your retirement? At what point in time should you plan your retirement? What point in time should be a good time to stop paying your mortgage and start saving some money? Should it be 40 years, 45 years? These are some of the conversations that we need to have had. So the gentleman would have read right on it what is important, that 5 persons, 5 kids in a class, the teacher wants to teach, but only 5 kids is available to be taught. So, I mean, how do we deal with these issues here in the absence where so many things are wrong? You talk about the board issue there. We have our ranges in place. There's systems in place, but we've been bypassing it because things have been working like that for a little while, for a long time, and we're comfortable with it. And now the stuff has hit the fan. We have COVID-19 on us, which is so very much exposed our weaknesses in the system, our borders, the weaknesses that are there, our weaknesses in management, our weaknesses at the ministry level, at the reporting level, and the man has hit the nail on the head when it comes to the functioning of the RDCs and the NDCs, because this is something you and I spoke about and we did raise as to what are the real uses of these people we vote them in. Is it to pick up garbage or clean your back alleyway, or do they have information and say, Yog lives in my area, Gildarie lives in my area, and they don't have a job now because they lost the job, they can't go out on the road to do the waiting job, so therefore he's a vulnerable person. They're supposed to know they've come and asked you for the vote. Over to you, Yog.
Yeah, but the caller is very right, as you said, and caller, thank you for that. It's refreshing to hear, that many of you do agree with the sentiments, and you, like you, I too. I mean, there comes a time you're fed up with politics, and everything in Guyana has unfortunately taken a political stance. And I want to take it this far, Leonard. A couple of weeks back, you and I spoke to a gentleman who was calling you from his rice land,
Yes.
somewhere way down. And again, I mean, you look at it one way or the other. Even for the man to get his rice crop irrigated or drained, it's a political decision how, when and how. So it's ridiculous. But I tell you what, Leonard, and a lot of people don't get this. I want to bring it. Unfortunately, it comes right back to politics. Here is why. The fact that every time a government changes, all of the PSs are sacrificed at the end of the day means that the PS themselves, unfortunately, are seen as political appointments. Now, that is a very, very sad thing, because the PSs are supposed to be the accounting officers. They are supposed to be the management officers or the CEOs of each ministry.
That's correct.
Because we know that the National Assembly representative or the minister or the cabinet person is the politician. It's not like that in Guyana, and it messes up every single thing you could think of. But guess how it gets even worse? It gets even worse when your child passed the National Grade 6 assessment exams. Guess who has to intervene for placements? Guess who has to intervene at this time for people to get little food along the countryside? Politicians. Guess who has been appointed to run even the national task force of a health emergency? Politicians. And the call is right. We just cannot move on. We're going around in a vicious circle. And brothers and sisters, it's the politicians telling you that dead people voting.
Well, you should ask me a question. Let me try to answer it with politicians. So the politician will be the word of the day. I think there's another caller online there. Yes, a caller online. Good afternoon, caller. You on the air?
Hi, good afternoon, Mr. Gildarie and Dr. Hill. Good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon.
Yeah, I agree 100% with that caller who just spoke regarding this schooling and everything. I'm a single parent. I'm living on the East Bank. And my child has to write grade 6 exam. We're supposed to be in April. I don't have a computer. I don't have an internet. I buy a daily paper for $80 every day. And as a mother who's not working because of the COVID-19, I only could teach her what I know. And I don't think it's right for the ministry to fix that July for these. These children are not prepared. I know my child in the hole is not prepared because I cannot teach her so fast like a teacher. And it's very hard. I might be one in that 100 like me out there who doesn't have the equipment and the resources for these children in. Thank you very much and have a blessed day.
Thank you very much. And so I think they're supposed to be taking a decision next week, Yog, with regards to coming out, and they would have an education campaign. And of course, many questions are going to be asked. The readiness of our students when it comes to writing these exams, CSEC and National Grade 6. I'm highly interested in the National Grade 6 because my little daughter is supposed to be writing, and while she might be ready, I'm very, very fearful, Yog, that there are thousands of others who are not ready because they have not, they're not probably fortunate enough to have had access to the resources that I have, and that for me is a big worry. And so I have lots of questions to ask the Ministry of Education next week when a decision I understand is expected to be taken on the way forward. Yes.
But Leonard, that call, that is a heartbreaking call.
Of course.
That's reality. Ladies and gentlemen, viewers and listeners, that's reality. We understand. And it's something Leonard and I have been speaking about day in, day out. There are people out there that cannot afford the things that the government takes for granted, the things that the politicians take for granted. There are children out there, Leonard. I spoke about this 2 weeks ago. One of every four child in this country, 1 in 4, do not even have the ability through their parents to enjoy 3 meals a day. Let me repeat that. 1 in every 4 child in this country may be living in poverty without a meal. What are we wasting time on? About dead people voting? Here is a mother. She can't afford internet. She can scarcely afford whatever it is. She buys the newspaper 1 per day to ensure she keeps on top of what's going on. And Leonard, at this stage, for these 3 months, That is what the state media should have been spending all their time on. Taxpayers' dollars. The Chronicle, the NCN, the Department of whatever political information I think they are now. They are the Department of Political Information. They should be spending 100% of their resources to provide and disseminate health and education. Health and education, full stop.
Visionary leadership. And then those are two words that we need to probably mull on and see whether it has any significance here in Guyana. But let's don't forget, we would have started this program here, Yog, with that announcement by the government yesterday when it comes to if you need some help. And if you need some help with regards, because you have been blasted by COVID-19. The government yesterday says that it is taking applications now for those people who they consider or who they would consider most vulnerable to give them some kind of help. And the persons who are going to be considered are the persons who are currently benefiting from public assistance provided by the Ministry of Social Protection, the persons who would have applied for such, the persons who have suffered a loss of income due to COVID-19, and the households headed by senior citizens or persons with disabilities. This would follow on the heels of what would have been announced recently by the Ministry of Finance. I think there's a small business bureau. Sorry, it's the Ministry of Business rather, Yog. The Small Business Bureau, if you have a small business, it could be categorized as such, and you have entered some difficulties. The Ministry of Business on South Road, they have some mechanisms there that you could register and receive some kind of cash assistance and other assistance. And so with regards to the assistance for the vulnerable persons now, these are the people who would have lost the jobs, the others who have...
So Leonard,
yes.
Here is the ridiculousness of it. I hate to be negative in this stead, but people are suffering out there. I just got an inbox message. If one Mr. Andrew lives at Siparuta and does not see this flyer that is circulating on social media and does not buy a newspaper to see that they could apply and has no means of making an application and taking it somewhere, how will Mr. Andrew get public assistance?
I thank you, Mr. Andrew, for that question, because I was just about to raise that. You did speak a little while ago about our taxpayers-funded NCN and I think Guyana Chronicle, and why are we not using these mediums in which to reach people? But of course, how do you get the information out to those people in the villages or Yala up the Quarantine River, in which people are living in so many pockets of riverine communities in villages that do not have access? We would have had talks by the government about ICT centers, how much 200, 300 of them open across the nation. Have they been utilizing them to have radios maybe in the community radios that's broadcasting? This is what has happened and we're not sure.
But Leonard, you spoke about this 2 weeks ago. What about the NDCs? Why are you not empowering the local government groups to do these things? It's mind-boggling. Why are you making central decisions and making the whole country gravitate towards central offices when you have the ability to go through the local, the NGOs, the local government organizations and get people the help they need? Use state media that our money. Leonard, let me tell you something. Give Mr. Andrew that just texted me that information. If he owed GRA money, don't you think GRA would have found him? If he owes, if God forbid he gets a light bill or he collects electricity and he owes money, don't you think they will find him to go cut him off? But we can't find them to give them the public assistance. Man, it's ridiculous.
Yes, so we come back to those who's going to be eligible for assistance for vulnerable persons. You could go to the Ministry of Social Protection, their website. You could also call 227 4410, 227 4410, and they could probably tell you how you could apply for those assistance for vulnerable persons. We've been talking about it the last couple of weeks. The government says we're ready to take applications now so we could be able to give you the help. And so there you have it. I'm not sure if we have another caller in line. Let's caller. yes, we would have lost that. Yog, and you're so right. What Andrew, the caller, would have said there. How do you really get the message across to some people that really matters? Those are the vulnerable people, especially within the hinterland areas, because there are thousands living there. Yesterday, we heard from Brian Alicock, the chairman of Region 9, which borders with Brazil there. There's 27,000 persons alone living in Region 9. So we have to be very careful that, thousands of persons, while we're paying attention to on the coastlands here, there's a whole bunch of people, thousands living in the hinterlands, in riverine communities that have no way of getting any kind of information. So our numbers here, this is a special edition of Elections COVID-19 Watch. We are winding down in a very short while. We could take some more calls, 226-7453, 226-7453, or you could WhatsApp us on 6222222. So we're here at Kaicho Radio, myself and Dr. Yog Mahadeo. Yog, in the meantime, there's a call in line. Yes, go ahead. Yes, go ahead, caller, you're on the air.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. How are you?
Good afternoon, sir. How are you doing?
Not bad. I want to ask you this thing. This recount is a recount or this is an audit? I don't know if it's an audit because I find all sort of things aside. And this happened now. When you fill this form and you send it in there, they will have to come and investigate you before you can get anything. That's my 2 point. Thanks.
Thank you very much, caller. Yog?
You deal with the second one first, Leonard.
The second one first. They would have to come in and investigate you. I'm not sure. We're probably going to have to ask some questions. I don't have any answers to that, honestly.
Okay. With regards to the first question on the recount, sir, it is a recount. The order that would have been gazetted says that it is a recount, but the order also stipulates what activities would constitute the recount. And so, yes, it would appear like as if all the checks and balances are in place to slow down the recount. But here is what, sir, I would like to see the positive in it. Here is this idea. Suppose we do the recount and you just go through the ballots, blah, 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 and you call out and you finish. And 10 persons, 10 agents are in the room and they had an issue. At the end of the declaration, they would all protest and say, well, we didn't get to voice our issues, and so this process is not good. So, you know what? You're going through the process already. It's going to cost you next 10, 15, 20 days. You might as well go through everything. The truth is that the recount processor, and Leonard, the recount process has opened our eyes to a lot of things, including the obvious machinations, the obvious purposeful falsification of records that was done to make that declaration by Mingo. Hadn't this recount been done the way it was done, that would have been swept under the carpet. So, sir, it is a recount. Yes, the process is long. Yes, it calls for a number of checks and balances, but maybe it is a good thing because we are learning a lot.
And yes, very good points, Yog, and thank you for that, caller. Let me tell you something, Yog. Last night I was sitting thinking, we had $8 billion that went to GCOM. Do we have any idea at this point in time whether the recount one is included in that $8 billion? Has the money been fully utilized for the house that they would have started and the elections process? Then the second thing that we would have to ask is what's the cost per day for each day that the recount is ongoing? Do we have any idea?
Well, no, and I remember I had asked Commissioner Gunraj that about a week and a half ago in a small chat that we had on our 592. But he said the costing was not within his purview. Remember, Leonard, the $8 billion that they received was an allocation. It was not based on presentation of bills. So it's like an allowance was made up to $8 billion. But at the same time, I hear your question there. That is, what is the real cost? And that is something I can't answer. And I'm sure that the AG and everybody else would be doing a post-elections assessment as to the real cost to this country
And
for
that's it.
this thing we call elections
And that's
2020.
the Auditor General, and so he's indicated, the Auditor General that Chalmers indicated that he is prepared to do a post-elections audit into the spendings of GCOM, and this may be aside from others who are calling for an entire COI into the operations of GCOM when this is all over and done with, whenever it's over and done with. Why I'm asking that, because this recount is something we could have done without. And if it's additional money, this is money that could have been used wisely elsewhere, Yog. So these are things that really, really concern. I don't like wasting money. I didn't grow up with a lot of money. And so when I see people wasting money and waste money like this, especially when we could have been very wise with the limited resources that we have, especially with COVID-19 upon us, and we're scrambling for the little cents that we have around the place now, and we're not getting money from elsewhere, then we should be worried and we should be mad and very angry at our leadership for putting us into a position like this. So there's a caller online. Let's go straight to the call. So we missed that. Yog, some thoughts maybe?
Well, Leonard, one of the callers, one of our viewers, has taken us right back to the education, and I really think we need to probably see if we can attract the attention of the chief education officer or somebody to come and let's talk, and let's all probably share ideas together, because parents need to know at the very least what they should be catering for. And I would like to ask parents out there that somehow or the other people need to get together, not physically, but people need to call each other. People need to start collaborate as a community. As our brother, one of the earlier callers said, his wife is a teacher, but the children are unable to join an online class. What I do know, Leonard, and this is the question I have for the chief education officer. What I do know is that some of the private schools have sent out syllabi, have sent out study materials, have sent out workbooks to the students at their homes. I don't know what is happening for the public school children. And that's the question. That's
some are
what we need
getting.
to-
Some are getting. There's some very, in fact, there are thousands of good teachers out there. Some of them don't have the resources available. They're trying. They're very concerned. But the fact is, what we're really concerned about is a holistic approach to this entire thing. I think there's a caller online. Yes, caller, you in the air. Good afternoon.
Hi, good afternoon.
Yes.
I heard it. I don't know if it's just
We barely hear you. Could you speak up a little?
Yeah, I don't have much credit. I don't know if you could just give me a call back.
We don't have any callers ID here, but go ahead. Go ahead quickly.
I'm very I agree with the caller call before, the gentleman, where he says that everything politics, everybody just depending on politicians to do this and politicians to do that. I'm calling from Essequibo,
Yes.
Lake Mainstay, where we have a Tusha. We are living right now in a pandemic. We had a truck had come in to do some distribution, hampers to villagers. And he stopped the truck from coming in because he said everyone, it has no one in the community in need. We're living in a pandemic, people not working, not having an income, and he's stopping help, I would say, because of politics. He said that the truck was one.
I think we lost the call there. Yes, we hear you there. And yoga, and so you see many of these stories coming out about some of the suffering that is happening to people, especially, and Lake Mainstay is an area that is behind, I think, the Anna Regina area there. So there's a long road that you go in. on the Essequibo Coast in Region 2. So you have many of those stories coming in, but it's something that we'd be looking into as to whether what is the situation there. So thank you very much, caller. We hear you, and we will be looking into that area there. Jorgen, closing very quickly this evening, room 592. We have what is likely to happen there? Is it going to be as hot as last night?
I certainly hope so, because there are a lot of questions, burning questions we have for Mr. Sage Gunraj, equivalent to some of those things we asked Mr. Alexander last night. Don't forget, Leonard, that you and I planned that Wednesday, Thursday, Friday was going to be really, really focused on the elections, totally,
yes.
room 592. And so yesterday we had Vincent Alexander, tonight we have Sage Gunraj, and tomorrow night we're going to have one of the local observer teams sit with us in room 592. So certainly tonight we hope to get a lot of answers from Commissioner Sage Gunraj. There is a brewing matter, as you know, where on the question of the observations, whether the GCOM secretary, whether the commission will heed the observations, put them to a litmus test, put them into some perspective before making a declaration, or whether it will just accommodate the observations and still proceed. There is a very, very fine difference there, right? So all of those things we hope to discuss with Mr. Sage Gunraj tonight, among other things, and of course tomorrow with the observer.
So thank you very much there, Dr. Yog Mahadeo, myself, on elections, COVID-19 watch. It's been engaging for the last 2 hours with you people. It has always been a pleasure, and we want to hear from you, whichever communities that you're in, that you're calling from. We had a caller there from Lake Mainstay on the Essequibo Coast, and of course we're hearing you. These are things that we look into when we finish it. It's not over yet. We're going to be back with you tomorrow, same place, same time, and wherever you are, wherever you've joined us from today, from Dr. Yog Mahadeo and myself, and from our technical operators down here, Kevin and Joshua, in our studios here, and from the management and staff of Kaicho Radio and Kaicho News, we want to say thank you very much for joining us, and have a pleasant rest of the day until we see you this evening, 7:30 sharp, in room 592 with Dr. Yog Mahadeo and myself. Thank you very much.